Good morning. I am Brad Usher, Senator Krueger's Chief of Staff. Senator Krueger is not able to join us today as the state budget process is ongoing and she is in conference, but she sends her best wishes. I would like to welcome program participants who are viewing on Zoom and Facebook or are calling into the 6th session of our 2002 Boomer Senior Roundtable series, Aging in Place, Living Well in the Community. This 8-part series is focused on some of the issues we need to address to age in place. Remaining roundtables will focus on technology and advocacy. I hope you can join us again for the 2 remaining presentations. As always, we have closed captioning of today's event. As a viewer, you have to activate closed captioning to view the text on your device. If you are in Zoom, click on Live Transcript in the meeting controls to start viewing closed captioning. If you're in the Facebook Live event, you will see a settings button in the bottom right-hand corner of the video. Click Closed Caption CC to start viewing closed captioning. This forum is being recorded and everyone who RSVP'd will receive an email with a link to the event video and all the resources that are posted in the chat within a few days, along with the presenter's PowerPoint. So you don't need to worry about taking notes on everything that goes through here. Before we begin the program, a couple of COVID updates. Based on the new COVID-19 transmission alert system, the city is on low alert, which means a low level of COVID-19 transmission citywide. However, we are now seeing an increase in COVID-19 test cases with higher case rates in Manhattan. What this means is that it is important to take extra precautions. Stay up to date with COVID-19 vaccinations and booster shots. Make sure to get tested before and after travel and gatherings if you have symptoms and if you are exposed. If you take an at-home rapid test and test positive, you can call 212 COVID-19 to ask about services and treatment. Wear a high-quality mask or double mask when you are in public indoor settings. High-quality masks include KF94, KN95, and N95 masks. Stay at home if you do not feel well. The FDA and CDC have authorized a second booster shot for people ages 50 plus who had their first booster dose at least 4 months ago. According to the CDC, people at higher risk of severe health outcomes include people 65 plus and people aged 50 plus with certain underlying medical conditions are most likely to benefit from the second booster shot at this time. Please see the CDC website for additional details, which is being posted in the chat. If you have any questions about whether you should get a second booster shot at this time, please speak with your healthcare provider or call 311 or 212-268-4319. And now we move on to today's event. Many of you call our office expressing concerns about aging alone. Planning for the future can feel overwhelming, particularly as a solar ager. What our speakers will emphasize today is that everyone can plan. It's important to understand that it's never too early or too late to start. Our speakers will talk about the major issues facing solar agers and offer some tools and strategies to help you. We have 2 wonderful speakers, Wendell Kornfeld, the developer of the Community as Family program, and Claire Solomon-Neeson, who is the manager of the Lasting Impressions program at Duro. Just to remind you before we start, we'll have a Q&A session after the presentation. You can also submit questions through the Q&A functions on Zoom and Facebook. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Wendell Kornfeld and Claire Neeson.
Hi, everyone. We are so grateful that you are here. I'm just going to start our PowerPoint. So give me just 1 second. Okay. So my name, as Brad said, thank you so much for the introduction, is Claire Solomon-Neeson, and I work at Duro. And today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our six-week Aging Alone Together workshop that we've developed, and then we're going to delve more deeply into our homes. So just a second about who I am and where I come from. I work for DeRote. We primarily serve older adults in the New York metropolitan area. During the pandemic, we engaged adults from 37 states, 66% of whom live alone. So that's another emphasis that you are not alone in this if that's how you identify. Now that you know a little bit about DeRote, which this is a picture of our building on the Upper West Side, I'm gonna talk to you about this program and share some tips and tricks and learnings that I hope that you'll come away with. So, who is aging solo? What does that mean? We think this means individuals who, by choice or by circumstance, function without a support system that's traditionally provided by family. But there are no set characteristics or demographic factors that define people who are aging solo. The term masks variations in our personal situations, in our income, in our cultural or physical or mental abilities, in our attitudes and our choices. And we think about not just the absence of friends or family, but about the availability and quality of support when needs arise. So with that in mind, we've adapted a 6-week workshop for solo agers that I'm going to tell you more about today. So this series was developed by Iona Senior Services in Washington, D.C., and is designed for people seeking tools, strategies, and support to age more intentionally and plan for the future. There are topic-specific presentations. I'm gonna go into what we speak about and give you a sneak peek on decision making, along with conversations and check-ins and some assignments. And we have an opportunity to have some small breakout groups that we call breakthrough groups, given what happens in the group. I hope that made you sort of smile. And then we end back together and talk about what we've learned. So participants are mailed a workbook, and we continue to add resources to that workbook. And I've shared a bunch of those resources today that will be in the chat and included in our follow-up email that you'll receive from the Senator's office. And we've had 4 of these programs so far, 2 for members of the DeRote community at large, and 2 also for LGBTQ+ identifying older adults. I know that some of you are in that community, and I've also included resources, again, that will be in the chat and also sent to you later that I hope will be good. Our first program, again, so you know that if you identify as a solo ager and you are thinking, I am all by myself, our first program had about 80 participants, and our subsequent programs had about 40 each. So, and there continues to be great interest. So one of the things I want to emphasize is that you are not alone. We're going to go into our mantras in a second. And again, what I'm bringing you in language and content was first developed by this Iona Senior Services in Washington, D.C., and we've adapted it. So these mantras, one of which Brad gave us a preview to earlier. It's never too early. It's not too late. You, again, are not alone. And take charge of your aging, or it will take charge of you. So the first means there's no magic time to start to plan for aging solo. Now is the best time. And you've demonstrated by being here that is something intuitively that you know. And it's good to remember that you're not alone. We've heard repeatedly from people, I'm glad to know that it's not just me, right? We take comfort in knowing, and there are 349 of you, we take comfort in knowing that there are others who might not have obvious people to help them as they age. And the third mantra was coined by someone who took one of these workshops. We don't pretend, right, that we can control everything, like our underlying health conditions or our income or the number of people in our family. That is not probably going to change. But there are many things that are partially, at least, in our control, like the size and scope and depth of our social network, like how we can plan advanced care planning, and housing. So this is what these are some of the things that we spend time talking about in this workshop. And I'm going to spend some time right now sharing resources from each section. So the first is the components of an aging solo support system: where you live, who provides companionship, and who helps you. So all these circles obviously interact with each other. The top circle, where you live, has a huge impact on the other 2 circles. So in terms of who provides companionship, this can mean family, friends, partners, members of a faith community, acquaintances, even pets, anyone, any living being with whom you can spend time and relax and have fun and share ideas. And everyone's experiences and ideas of companionship can vary, right? It's that notion is really elastic. The third circle, who helps you, is about who's available now or might be in the future to help you as you experience health challenges or crises. So if you become incapable of making your own decisions, you'll need trusted people to serve as legal and health and financial decision makers. And you might need someone who can serve as a health advocate or a healthcare proxy. I know that you've spoken about that before, and I'm going to talk also a little bit about it in a minute. So of course, there can be overlap between where you find companionship and who provides help. And while there are many things that family and long distance friends or long distance family and friends and acquaintances can do, there also are things that you might want to hire or have to hire other kinds of help or turn to community organizations, so many of which are in your district. So now for many people aging solo, life circumstance has made their list of companions shorter than they might like, and thus it can be harder to find help. And as we all know, aging can bring loss in many areas that can result in a reduced social network, like retirement or a widowhood or divorce, or our children move out or away, or friends move away or experience health challenges or pass away. And when we connect, especially with those to whom we are close, our feelings are acknowledged and we have a physiological response. Our cortisol, right? Our stress hormones go down. And this is sort of the adult version of what happens when a child is comforted by a caregiver. So even when we interact with people to whom we're not very close, it feels good and it's important. So this is an exercise to help us map the relationships in our lives, this relationship circle. So the diagram on the screen you'll see has 4 concentric circles with you're in the middle. And each circle represents a group of people who you are closer or less close to. There's the circle of intimacy. That's like people you can't imagine your life without, who know your private self quite well, who perhaps you live with them, you trust them the most. Often this can also be a therapist or a spiritual being, or again, a pet. Then we have our circle of friendship for people who are close to you, but with whom you are less intimate. Perhaps they don't live with you or support you in a financial way, but they share your good news. And they also share your troubles. And maybe you spend time with that person now in person, or particularly during COVID, on the phone or online. Our next circle is participation. These are people with whom you interact frequently, but you don't consider them friends. So acquaintances, coworkers, neighbors, again, members of a faith community or a support or 12-step group, friends of friends, children of friends. Just thinking about all the people who are in our orbit. That's what this relationship circle activity does. Next, we have the circle of exchange. That's people with whom you do transactions. So a doctor, an acupuncturist, a hairstylist, a checkout clerk at the grocery store or the drugstore. And of course, you might be thinking the boundaries between these circles are fluid, right? People can move in and out of them for all kinds of reasons. I want to pause and note that thinking about our relationships can be challenging. There's no way around that. It can bring up feelings of loneliness and loss. And if you're feeling that, you're not alone. These are such common experiences throughout our lifespans, and particularly as we age. And if your circles don't have as many people as you would like, we have some ideas for building and deepening one's social network, which takes work, but it's good to remember that a lot of people, maybe even each of you, right, want to expand their networks as well, and they might be open to your overtures. So the new phrase I want to introduce that's not on the screen is third places. So third places refer to places where people spend their time between home, the first place, and work, if you are still working, the second place, or the second place you spend most of your time. Third places are locations where we exchange ideas. We have a good time. We can build relationships, like joining a gym, again, a faith community or a 12-step group, a library, a park, a class. You can probably think of others. And in pandemic times, sometimes it's harder to find these third places, but Also, many have been opened given the prevalence now of online workshops and classes and communities. It's a COVID silver lining with many organizations and institutions. And I also want to highlight volunteering as a way to meet new people and engage in new opportunities. It's really a way to do something regularly, meaningfully, and helps cultivate and deepen relationships. And again, we know this takes time and investment, but just planting a seed for places that might become these third places. Now I'm going to switch gears totally. And the third topic that we focus on in this workshop is healthcare decision-making and end-of-life choices. I know you've had a separate roundtable about end-of-life decision-making and documents, but this is just a good refresher. And as you know, one of the most important decisions is to choose someone who could make future decisions for you if you were ill or injured or unable to make decisions for yourself and communicate your own wishes. And that person's a healthcare proxy or agent. So remember, this person only makes decisions if you had a sudden event and could not make decisions on your own. So we often encounter members in our Aging Alone Together community who feel as if they have no one to appoint as their agent. And I just wanted to touch briefly on that with you. Often people assume that your agent must be a spouse or a partner or a relative or someone you're close to, but this is not necessarily the case. Your healthcare agent may be anyone you trust who's accessible and willing and able to assume this role. So do you have a friend or a neighbor or someone you know from communities you're part of? Again, like your faith community, your gym, your community organization who might serve in this capacity. Perhaps someone who may need a healthcare agent themselves so that you might be able to do this for each other. And also think about like who sends you a birthday card each year? Who's someone you're always happy to see or talk to, who's also always happy to see or talk to you. We consider widening our net of acquaintances, again, by signing up for classes or volunteering and not automatically assuming that this is too much to ask of someone. You'll never know until you pose the question. And in the days now of easy communication over distances, as long as this person agrees to serve in this role and has a clear understanding of your wishes, they can serve in this position. You'll want to make sure, of course, to provide detailed contact information for them and potentially appoint an alternate in case they're unavailable. But food for thought to think about who else you might be able to identify. If you are unable to designate an agent, it's still important to document your wishes and your preferences. And that's what we call a living will. So a living will can either be a formal document or something more freeform, like a letter or an audio or video recording. It's meant to be instructional in nature, so offer guidance. It's not a mandate. It's not a legal form like the healthcare proxy. But a living will is a way for your voice to be heard. And there's much evidence to suggest that it will be honored. And there are many templates for living wills that can guide you in providing information to make your healthcare team know what you might want. So the form also, if you go through the process of filling out, a living will, can also serve as a conversation starter. Should you find someone who's able to serve as your legal agent? And Wendell will speak more about the importance of completing other necessary documents and directives and organizing and storing and sharing your documents and your wishes. Okay, so finally, I have two finallys. My first finally is aging in place, which again, Wendell Pornfeld is going to delve more deeply into this topic. But we see three components of aging in place: whether your neighborhood or community meets your needs, the accessibility of your home in terms of mobility. And again, I know you've had a roundtable about making your home more accessible. It's wonderful to have so much information. And services and supports to help you if you're unable to handle daily tasks. So I know that you all live in neighborhoods that are accessible in terms of transportation. That is very lucky. And Wendell is going to delve more deeply into the nitty-gritty. I know that there are also some questions about making a move. And I've sent some resources that will be, again, in the chat and in the follow-up email about moving. So I just want to acknowledge that I know that there are many things on your minds. So now what? I know this can be overwhelming, and I want to suggest one method that might help decrease that overwhelming feeling. Whether you have many items on your list or just a few, it can still be hard to know where to start. And that's where we suggest a framework from a book called One Small Step Can Change Your Life, The Kaisen Way by Robert Maurer. And that's on your screen, you can see it. So as Maurer explains, Kaizen is a Japanese term that can mean using very small steps to improve a habit or a process or a product. And in our context, it means overcoming some of our barriers to make change or tackling some big items on your to-do list. And the magic of this method is taking steps that are so small, they're like so teeny tiny that your brain doesn't even really notice. And the Kaizen way tells us that if we start with a really small step, we can actually trick our brains into not causing that flight, fight, or freeze response. And I know you've all at one point felt that fight, flies. Let's see if I can say it. That flight, fight, or freeze response. So we can trick our brains to not having that happen and instead accomplish that small piece of the project. And once we've done that, we can decide on the next very small step and the next one and the next one. So the trick is to make it so small that it almost sounds absurd. So I'm going to give you an example. And first should say that one big step is that you are here, right? You came to this roundtable. That means something, and you should acknowledge it for yourself. So let's think now that you need to think about who to ask to be your healthcare agent. Maybe your first step is to find your address book, like locate it. And that's it. That's all you need to do. And then the next day, maybe your step is to write down the names of everyone you're still in touch with. And then walk away. And then eventually you'll have to winnow the list down. And maybe you'll have to add to it, but I think you get the idea, right? We don't wait for the perfect moment to tackle a big project, and don't try to tackle it all at once, particularly if you find it overwhelming. So here are some other suggestions. An accountability buddy, so a friend or an acquaintance who will check in with you regularly to see what progress you've made. Even better is if that person also has something to accomplish related to aging solo or not. And you can provide that same accountability and support. You could work with a professional or a care manager. Again, a mental health clinician if you're feeling distress or anything like that. A care manager can also help review your goals for aging solo and refer you to resources targeted to your needs. And also can consult with a clergy person, a faith leader, or a community leader. I know you know where to find community leaders again, since you're here. Mm-hmm. To conclude with my part, I just want to include one quote from one of our alums so that you can remember that we really are in community together. While it may feel like you are aging solo, we are together and you are here. And we offer this Aging Alone Together program on a quarterly basis. Our next program begins in a few weeks in mid-April. Space is limited, but we'd be happy for you to join us. And the email to join us is either in the chat or going to be in the follow-up email. So don't worry, you're welcome to email us to learn more. And I now want to focus more specifically on aging in place with Wendell Kornfeld. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, everybody. I'm Wendell Kornfeld. I'm the developer of Community as Family, which is an empowerment program for solo agers. Today, I'm going to speak about one specific aspect of solo aging in place. I call it home interrupted. Would it be prepared for your absence? So to explain that, let's think about before COVID. Before COVID, we traveled often, maybe business travel, vacations, long weekends away from home. And we knew what we had to plan for while we're away. And the beauty part of that was we knew what day we were going to leave, and we knew what day we were going to be scheduled to come home. Well, that all changed with COVID, especially at the beginning. Unfortunately, there were tens of thousands of people who had to go to the hospital, often on very short notice. And they stayed there days, weeks, sometimes months, or they had to transfer to a rehab facility or to even a nursing home. Now, if somebody is at home, they can cover a lot of the details of things you might be worried about. But solo agers, well, we have more of a challenge in that department. So right now I'm going to focus on some short-term and long-term planning, that some tips we can use to minimize the chance of things going wrong if we have to be away from home for an extended or indeterminate period of time. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm doing okay. Why do I have to think about this now? Why should I plan for this now? Well, peace of mind. Peace of mind, I think, is something that we all want more of. So if we have peace of mind while we're away, here are some of the things we might be happy that have been taken care of. We don't have to worry so much about. Your bills are paid on time. Mail is picked up and processed, or you might want to actually have the post office stop delivery of your mail. Your deliveries won't be misplaced or stolen. The newspapers won't pile up and signal that you're away. You might want to contact your newspaper carrier and have the subscription suspended for a period. Your responsibilities to others is anticipated. If you're a caregiver yourself, or you regularly do favors for someone or help somebody out, at least you'll know that that person is aware that you're away and other arrangements can be made. Prevent unauthorized entry to your home. And assurance that your pets, which are companions, as Claire so eloquently said, your pets and plants will be taken care of, and your home will be ready for your return. When it comes to bill paying, let's think about some scary things like an insurance policy not being renewed on time. You might want to consider something called third-party notification. The insurance company will send a reminder to another person you designate if you are not paying your premium on time. And that could be a very important step. I do that for myself for my long-term care policy. In fact, I named somebody who doesn't live in my building, just in case for some reason the mail is interrupted coming to my building. At least that person in another building will get the notification. Hey, Wendell's premium is coming due and she hasn't paid it. So think about that. Let's see. Why don't we have the next slide, please? Okay. So who needs to know that you're away? Who has the keys? Hopefully you have given a key or two to some trusted friends or neighbors. So who needs to know and who has the keys to your apartment or your home? Well, anybody who regularly depends upon you, like for caregiving, as we mentioned before. Some people have a housekeeper that comes regularly to their home, or an exercise or a physical therapist, or a dog walker. The building manager of, if you live in an apartment building, may have the keys to your home. You should let your clergy know, if you belong to a house of worship, let your clergy know that you're going to be away for a while. And especially for these health-related long periods, because a lot of synagogues and churches and mosques, I assume, have what is called caring communities, and they can very often be a great help during a period of time. Your primary care physician will probably already know that you're ill and you're away, but let's not assume. Let's make sure your PCP also knows. And your neighbors, let your closest neighbors who live on your floor or next door to you know, because they can be your eyes and ears while you're away. Okay. Next slide, please. One thing I do want to mention that I neglected before is some people have a second home, whether for weekends or for the summer, or they may lease it to another person. Everything we're talking about today, if you have a second home, we're going to have to double that message for you. Okay, so making sure your bills are paid while you're away, that's a great concern to so many people. If you pay by check, that's one way you pay by bills. Some people have their expenses automatically billed to their credit cards. If you do that, you can have your credit card paid directly from your bank account. So that's an automatic thing. You don't have to worry about the checks. You might also, depending on how long you're going to be away and how serious the situation is, you might want to hire a daily money manager. You might often want to hire a bill paying service. Yes, there are such things like through the Department for the Aging in New York, Silver Bills, that's another one, they take care of it. And if you really are in a poor state of health, you might want to, at this time, invoke your power of attorney. This power of attorney will take care of your financial issues if you cannot. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so cards, fridge, wastebaskets, lights. These are some other things to think about if you're going to be away. If you have a car and you've been getting up early every day, going moved from one side of the street to the other, somebody else is going to have to do that. If you can't find somebody who can do that, think about having the car put in the garage. Either they can do it for you if you do not have the time to do that yourself. Whoever has a key to your apartment or your home, ask them to remove the perishables from your fridge. And here's a true story. I spoke to a social worker once, and her client had suddenly had to go away for a couple of months to hospital and rehab. While she was away, her electricity was turned off, and there was a lot of food in the refrigerator. So you can imagine what that was like when she came home. Not good. Have your waste baskets dumped, the trash baskets, especially if they've got some kind of organic stuff in them. You don't want any pests in your home. And remember to turn off lights and appliances that may be running up electric bills or running down batteries. Next slide, please. Okay. Pets, yes, pets are part of our family. And of course, we would worry so much about make sure that they're safe, happy, well-fed. So again, do you have somebody who can come in and play with the pet, feed it and clean? If it's a dog, that's not so easy. They need to be walked, and you may want to think about moving your pet to someone else's home for a while. And if that's not possible, check with your veterinarian, because they know who the long-term boarding people are. If you have plants, and a lot of us have plants that we love as much as pets, I think they add so much to our homes, and they're living things. So again, have somebody come in and water them, make sure they have light, or maybe that person, if they're a plant lover, will take them into their own home. If somebody can pick up your mail, that would be great. Bring it to you for processing. And let your doorman know what to do with deliveries, either perishable or non-perishable. And again, assuming you've thought about all the possible deliveries and taken care of that in advance, sometimes we get deliveries we weren't anticipating, lovely gifts maybe, but in any event, if you live in an apartment building, your door people need to know what to do if you get deliveries. Next slide, please. Okay, so the go bag. So after 9/11, I think a lot of us took some classes in disaster preparation, and we should all have a go bag anyway, just in case. And the go bag is something where if you have to leave home quickly, you don't want to say, oh my goodness, I don't have time to put this together. Well, you can put some things together ahead of time. I know people that have a go bag 24/7, 365 days of the year. Now, a go bag would include your health history and the list of your medications, copy of your medical insurance card, copy of your healthcare proxy and your living will. And you can go online to get other ideas, because everybody's needs for go bags is a little bit different. And there's plenty of information online of things to suggest to go into it. You may also have a fridge card, and I would recommend that you do. The fridge card is for EMS and the fire department. This is not just for New York. People across the country do this. And the fridge card lists essential information about you. If EMS or the fire department comes into your home, and if you're not responsive, especially, they really need some quick information about who you are in order to treat you the right way, because time can be such a crucial factor in these cases. So it'll have your name and your birth date, whom to notify in an emergency, the name of your primary care physician, your chronic health issues, the location of your healthcare proxy, and unfortunately also end of life arrangements, just in case things are truly dire. Next slide, please. Okay, and don't forget this, check your calendar. A lot of us New Yorkers, we're very, very busy lives and we plan well in advance. So if there is time, don't forget to check your calendar. Do you have upcoming dental appointments, medical appointments? You should have those canceled or rescheduled as necessary. And if someone was going to say, pick you up for a colonoscopy, when you cancel that colonoscopy, be sure to let the person know that they won't be helping you there. So again, by planning in advance, you'll ward off possible problems for yourself and for others. Next slide, please. Okay, so with luck, some good planning, and a good support network, your home should be safe and clean and ready for you to come home and hopefully start living your best life again. And one final tip. If you can, try to get a friend or neighbor or delivery service to get some groceries into your home so that they're there when you come back. Some of the essentials like milk and bread and fruit and soup. And that way you can come home, you can start your healing process, relax, and you won't have to worry about running out to the grocery store. So on that note, I wish everyone good health and a beautiful spring. And thank you for listening.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I was typing something into the chat. Okay, so thank you both, Wendell and Claire. Now we will move on to the Q&A portion of the event. Several of you asked questions about aging in place resources. I'm including information about how to get Senator Krueger's Senior Resource Guide, which has numerous resources on aging in place and other vital services for older adults. You can access the guide online. The link will be in the chat, or you can email us at lkrueger@nysenate.gov or call our office at 212-490-9535, and we can mail you a copy of the guide. And just to remind you, we will email you a list of all resources listed in the chat when we send you the link to today's event video. Now we will start with questions that were sent ahead of time. As a reminder, you can continue to submit questions through the Q&A functions on Zoom and Facebook. All right, so a lot of these questions are a little personal, but I think they get at broader concerns that folks have. So one about somebody who recently lost someone. Last month, I lost my last living relative. I was notified in person by state troopers who came to my house and couldn't leave until I called someone to be with. I didn't have anyone close to where I live. As a single person, it's getting very hard to function alone. Are there any services in the city that can be used for situations like this? And obviously our Senior Resource Guide is one resource, but there may be other things that Claire or Wendell want to highlight.
So I think we're including some resources in the chat and in the Senior Resource Guide and in the follow-up. That's a great question. I think those resources, I hope, will be a good sufficient start. And I know that many of you, while you maybe weren't in this exact situation, are feeling like, but really I am alone. It is me. And now what? And we hold that, right? We hold that experience. And what we try to do is provide these additional resources, additional ways in which you can build community, so that you can find other people who are in this this could be in a potentially similar situation. I'm sorry to not have a more robust answer, but I think acknowledging that while that situation is might be unique, what Brad suggested is that we understand that many of you feel that way and want you to know that right here you're in community, right? And also if you choose or to participate in this 6-week program with DeRote, that's an additional community. And we just look for ways in which for you to find and have those additional sources of support. Wendell, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, certainly take advantage of places like DeRote and widen your net as much as possible so you meet more people who could possibly help you or be a companion in these circumstances. It would be lovely if there was one central place called Find a Friend Immediately. Wouldn't that be great? But there isn't. It takes time to develop these relationships. So it's harder because of COVID, being able to go places. Your public library is probably a great place to go. They're not just books anymore. They're real community centers. You can meet lots of people there. There's lots of online communities. Get Set Up is one of the best. You will meet so many people on Get Set Up, and there's an interest for everyone. There's an organization online called Meetup. And again, you can find people who share your values and interests, and it's a great way to meet new people. And everything that I'm recommending, believe me, I have done. And certainly if you're in a house of worship, there's plenty of opportunities for you to get involved in their activities. So widen the net of possibilities.
Great. And I think that is largely an answer to the next question, but I'll read it anyway, because I think this is such a universal problem, is how do we find the people to build connections? It's hard at any phase of life, but it's hard. It gets harder and harder, or it's especially hard when you feel like you're isolated. I no longer have family, friends. My friends have died and moved far away from me. For 25 years, I've lived in an unfriendly building where people say good day, and it seems run away from me. I go to the senior center and we smile and say pleasantries, but when I ask a probing question, they won't answer. A probing question is typically, what do you do during the day to amuse yourself? So far, no one has answered, they just smile. So question, how can I find some sort of companionship? Enter a network. I take Zoom classes and travel with ARP from Queens to Manhattan. What to do about loneliness and isolation? And it's a variation on the same question, but I'll let see
and also sounds like whomever you are doing seems like you are such a wonderful self-advocate, and you are already out there, right? And that should be, that is such a big step. You should be commended for all the ways in which you are seeking out community. And I think some of the organizations that Wendell just suggested, DeRote itself, there might be more opportunities for you to meet people.
Mm-hmm. And certainly, as Claire mentioned earlier in her presentation about volunteering. Volunteering is my favorite way of meeting people, and I have met lifelong friends that way, because there's a cause for everything. Everybody needs volunteers. And if you sign up for a particular thing that you're interested in, whether it's pets or parks or animals or book, what you name it, hospital, it's limitless. If you find a cause where they need volunteers, you're going to meet other people who have that same passion as you do. You've already got something in common. So that's a great way to start a relationship.
Yeah, and you mentioned Meetup. I'll flag that as something that I found a running group in Elmhurst, because I like to run, and they're very localized things where you just search a word that you like to do, whatever it is. I'm looking for a reading group. I'm looking for a knitting group. I want a gym buddy. I don't know what, whatever it is. And you meet up, and I'm gathering some of the other groups. That's the one I'm familiar with, but some of these other groups you may be able to find. And that's the good news is, you're online work here, so most of you, so Google Meetup, and then once you're in there, you can search on an interest you have and see if you can find groups that are doing that.
And also just what a gift volunteering you're giving to each other, right? It's reciprocal. It's you're giving something to someone else, it's making you feel good. In turn, it's making them feel good. So that's just
Win-win.
a double gift. It's a huge present.
Great. Okay, moving on to some questions around finances, documents, and bill paying. I live alone with my mother, who is 99 years old. We have no family, and we do not have friends or neighbors on whom we can count. My question is, what solutions can you suggest if something happens to me and I become am incapacitated and cannot take care of things, including bill paying? You talked about some of this, but where do I start? What's the first place I turn in that situation?
Yes, I had mentioned before New York City's Department for the Aging, known as DFTA, does have a bill paying program where somebody will come to your home and help you with your bills. And you do have to qualify for it, but it's not an onerous process, as I understand it. That's one way. There is an organization, and I have never used this, and so this is not a personal recommendation, but they advertise, and I do know somebody else who used it. It's called Silver Bills, and Silver Bills exists specifically to help people, whether they have vision problems or cognitive, or some people can't even write well anymore because of their arthritis or whatever. So Silver Bills is another one. And again, daily money managers, there's an organization, a national organization of daily money managers, and this reference will be in the supply chat as well, where you find somebody in your area who can help you with all aspects of not just your bills, but all aspects of your financial needs. So off the top of my head, there's one in New York City called Eddie and Shine. They've been around a long time. Again, I've never used them. I've interviewed them. I know what they do. And but if you go to the National Organization for Daily Money Managers and you put in your zip code, it'll list everybody. So you have a choice.
And just a couple of things, for going back to my previous discussion, a couple of things that came in through the Q&A as other suggestions, and I think we can probably track down information on these. There's the Transition Network for Companionship, and within it, the Caring Collaborative, which is a voluntary network of members who provide help to members in need. And I think that was also in the context of groups that folks, to address loneliness. And the JCC Manhattan has great programs. So those are some other places to turn for connections to folks.
Right. Yes, the JCC has a program called Living Well Together for solo agers who can depend on one another for various practical things. And the Caring Collaborative, I belonged to that for over 10 years. Again, it exists for people in your neighborhood to help each other. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then there are a number of questions about the issue which always comes up when we talk about this is, what do you do if you don't have somebody that you feel confident can be your healthcare proxy or power of attorney or other things? There are limits to that, but certainly the suggestion from Claire about making a video or some documentation of what your wishes are, a living will are ways to address that. And we have a video, a previous event on this, which is on the Senator's website, that goes into a lot more detail on that. But if anything you want to add to that?
Terrific. No, we, again, this is, you are not alone. This is a common question that we get also. And that's why often when we have, if you are in a group such as this Aging Alone Together workshop or another group of people, and you all find out that you have the same, like, who is going to be my proxy, perhaps you could be each other's proxy. It's an idea about connecting people who are seeking the same thing to each other. But making a living will, if you don't have someone who you trust or identify with to serve as your healthcare proxy, we just strongly couldn't recommend more to make a living will. Again, it's not a legal document, but there are many forms. I'm happy also to send, I hadn't done this before, but I'm happy to send one to include in the follow-up email as well. There are many templates and forms that you can look at to fill out, and just have that on your person, give it to your doctor, give it to someone with whom you were in touch. And again, not a legal document, but evidence that that is followed. Those are your wishes, right? It's no one's goal to go against your wishes. If you have written down, this is what I want, it's understood. There is evidence to suggest that that if it can, it will be what you've said will be followed. So we would recommend writing, video, audio, having a living will.
And you said something very important that I think we need to emphasize. Give your doctor a copy of it, all right? God forbid you're in the hospital, you're not responsive, and they wonder who your healthcare proxy is. Well, your doctor will know, all right? So make sure that there's a way for the hospital to know.
And I fear I know the answer to this one, but I'll ask, are there any groups or organizations that have volunteers, members who can serve as a healthcare agent, be listed on a healthcare proxy form for those without anyone they can list? Yeah,
that's a great idea.
That would be another, that's right up there with, find a friend immediately. No, it's, these people are going, that you assign these crucial roles to are the ones that you have taken the time to develop a relationship with.
Okay, great. Okay. For senior citizens who do not have any nearby relatives, what is the feasibility and potential expense of hiring a professional geriatric coordinator who can organize a sick person's care?
I can't give you a number. I sent the American Academy for the organization for what is now called Aging Life Care Professionals. I don't know if you will hear that term. That is the new term for geriatric care professional. It's Aging Life Care Professional. Their website is either in the chat or will be in the follow-up email. That will definitely have more accurate information. It's the subtext of what I hear is accurate. It's not cheap, right? It's expensive. And it's another thing that we can't go around, that we try to build around by suggesting all these other sources of support that could serve. But aging life care professionals also do wonderful work. And some are on sliding scales. They have different fee structures. Some, depending on your insurance policy, some I think are covered in some way by insurance. I can't give more specific information about that because that wouldn't be fair. But if you go on the organizational website, which I know that you have, you'll certainly be able to learn more information.
Okay. I've got some housing questions, and I'm supposed to mention that NYC Housing Preservation and Development partners with community-based service providers in New York City who help people prepare and apply for Housing Connect affordable housing lotteries. Housing ambassadors can provide information and assistance with the application process and will be listed in the chat. 2 questions about sort of housing arrangements that I'll put together as one: how to research senior living communities in Manhattan, and should one enter assisted living before it's needed?
Well, Claire, do you have a specific reference for that?
So I see it just in the chat right now. There's an answer to that, how to research senior living communities.
Good, somebody else is handling.
So that's great.
And we will share that link in the follow-up too.
Yeah, so we have a few links to that. We have links particular to the LGBTQ plus community. SAGE, which is the oldest organization that's been serving LGBTQ older adults in New York City, has developed their own way in which to note what communities are LGBTQ plus friendly and offer different services and systems of support. And that link also will come to you. So there are big databases or resources organizations that can help sort out all of the different types of housing. And the second question we also speak about in our workshop a little bit. It's the notion of a reactive versus a proactive move. So reactive meaning you move because, as Wendell talked about a little bit, something has happened and the circumstance has changed. And proactive meaning you think, oh, maybe sometime I will need to move. Let's think about it now. And there are, of course, you can weigh both of them, but we go into that a little bit more. And Wendell, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add that when it comes to independent and assisted living alternatives, they're not regulated by the government like nursing homes. So they have their own rules and regulations and all sorts of legal things. They work pretty independently. So you have to know exactly what you're signing on for and what you're getting and what you're not getting. And you do want to do that kind of research, especially you want to find out, the financial health of these places. Some of them go out of business. I've seen a few go out of business in the past few years. They get taken over by other big companies that really aren't into that particular business and they just want the land. There's all sorts of things, but there are plenty of good ones there too. So take the time now before it's urgent that you make a decision and a move, and do that research.
And this could be one of those Kaisen Method things, right? This could be you find one of these websites that's in the chat with the long list of the communities. You spend like 5 minutes looking at it, and then today you close the tab.
Yeah.
And then you open it tomorrow and you see, oh, one is actually near my house. Maybe I'll look into it a little bit more. And then you close the tab and on and on and on.
Right. No, that's a brilliant example of how to take on something big and put it into small increments, and then it's much more tameable. But you also, in specifically addressing the question of should I do it earlier than later, that's finding that sweet spot is really hard, because if you make a move maybe too early, you're giving up the things that you love now. So you want to make sure that what you're going to will make up for that loss, or at least there's the potential for it. If you wait too long, we know what can go wrong there. So I get asked this a lot. So finding the sweet spot, yeah, that's a challenge. Let's acknowledge that. Yeah.
And I think another thing we've heard is if you have a neighbor, friend, acquaintance who's also thinking about where if they might want to move or where, you could look together, right? You can go, there are all of these places. Usually you can have a tour, have a free consultation, right? They also want you to be there. So they're going to want to tell you about what it's like to be there, and see if you can find a buddy who wants to just do that exploratory research with you.
Yeah, and have a list of questions ahead of time. You and your buddy have those questions, and you can find questions to ask online as well. Be prepared to ask those questions. And some places will even let you stay there a night or maybe two, so that you have a better morning to night to next morning experience of what it would be like to live there. And talk to the people who are already living there. Ask them to be candid.
But the seed planting is remembering that this doesn't all have to happen tomorrow.
Right.
Okay, next question is for Wendell. How to find and choose a reputable elder care lawyer, or a list? Is there a list of them?
There's reputable is an adjective that I'm not sure I can deal with that, but in terms of, are they licensed lawyers, members of the bar? Absolutely, you'll find that. And there is a website for elder law attorneys. They have a national website, and it's the kind of thing where, again, you can plug in your zip code and it'll tell you in your area who the elder law or state law attorneys are. Now, looking at a list of reputable licensed attorneys is one thing. Using them is another. Like every other relationship, it's chemistry, it's timing, it's all sorts of things. So what I would do if I was looking, I would first talk to the people that I know who use this kind of law firm. and say, ask them really pointed questions. What do you like about dealing with this law firm or with this particular attorney? What made you choose them over anybody else? Is there any problem in your communications? Do they respond to you quickly? Have they saved you money? Did they get, most of all, remember peace of mind? We talked about that a while back. Do they give you peace of mind that your estate and that your wishes are taken care of? And I think personal recommendations are the first way you should go.
I think a plug for NILAG, who I know they've presented to you before, but I think I'm sure on their very extensive website, you can also find some additional information.
And we do actually have a link on the video that NILAG was at. We have a link for some of these resources as well.
Terrific.
Including
we at DeRote work with NILAG quite frequently, and they offer so many different services.
Okay. This relates to things you've talked about, but I'll ask specifically, is there anything you can do if you do not have any family members alive and no one to assist you if you go into the hospital and become disabled? Some of this is the planning stuff that Wendell, you were talking about, but anything to add to that?
Well, so troubleshooting it, you could check a place like DeRote or JASA, or, these community-based organizations, and just say, I want to be kind of proactive about this. What's the kind of thing I should be thinking of? What kind of resources, where could you help me with this planning and thinking? You also want to go to your local county's Department for the Aging. Virtually every county, I think, has one in every state. Look online, see what their Department for the Aging or Aging Services or Senior Services, whatever they call it, find out what they offer in your area. And again, by doing that, advanced thinking before it's a crisis is usually time very well spent.
And I think Wendell's idea about, speaking to a building, if you don't have a doorman, speaking to your super, your building manager, whomever is the person who has all of the keys, right? I think having some kind of connection with them is a good idea.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is certainly something that people of all ages face, but it's harder if you don't have anybody. What escort services when going for a simple medical procedure?
So we will, I think this will be in the chat and in the follow-up. So DeRote happens to have a program called Door to Door, where you do have to be home assessed by DeRote. So a social worker has to assess you, and then you become part of our DeRote system. I see it's in the chat now, and we, as it says, just travel companions accompany older adults anywhere in Manhattan. Appointments booked a few weeks in advance. This is when they're available. They also help with grocery shopping, I believe, and appointments and shopping and things like that. So happy to have you investigate further with Door to Door.
Great.
And also the Transition Network, as we mentioned before, they have a national branch. Well, it's part of their organization. It's a national organization called the Caring Collaborative, and they set up groups in your neighborhood. So it's convenient. And they are people, women over 50 can join, and they exist to help one another in terms of especially health crisis. And I know I have done plenty of hospital pickups in my time for them, and picking up medications and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Also, I think if you either in the Aging Alone Together program at DeRote or elsewhere, when you decide after this that you're going to take one small step and find an organization that you think is doing something that is interesting to you and you're going to volunteer with them, sometimes within those groups, you'll find someone who says, hey, do you want to, this happened in our last workshop. So we divided geographically, and there was an Upper West Side group, and someone said, oh, well, if you want, I can get groceries for you if, one day. And I imagine that happened. I think we also often, we hope that we encounter people who are kind.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, that's beautiful.
We hope that we encounter people who are kind.
Okay, you've already, the next question was about specific information on communities for LGBTQ plus folks, and you talked about that and agencies that can provide help, this kind of help. SAGE is a great, very well-established group that both has resources on housing, but in general support, community building, you know, they have events and things that can also be a way to make connections. So they're a good resource.
Yeah, SAGE also has a group for veterans that I included in the chat. SAGE is so wonderful. And we've also we've offered this workshop specifically for members of the LGBTQ community. As I said, we're going to do that again likely in June. I don't have more information about that yet, but if that's of interest to you, you're welcome to email that same email that you're going to have, and we'll put you on a list. And that also, I imagine, if you're not free in June or whenever that happens to be, I imagine those will happen again as well. So it's just another, and I see more in the chat. DeRote is doing more LGBTQ plus specific community programming, and encourage you to check that out.
And if you are in the Jewish community, CBST is a wonderful congregation downtown, and I helped them set up their solo agers group a couple of years ago, and it is thriving and taking off. They've got great speakers. It's a fabulous community. So CBST.
Next question is about volunteering. How can I volunteer? There are groups like New York Cares, which provide you can search for volunteer opportunities based on your interests. In our senior resource guide, there's a lot of lists of organizations. Some are aimed at people with professional backgrounds where you might be able to use your professional experience to help others. And you guys may have stuff to add to that, but the senior resource guide is certainly a good place to start for that. We're also going to put in the chat a link to an article about the benefits of volunteering, some of which I think have been discussed earlier. So anything to add to that about volunteering?
I don't think so. I think
you covered a lot already.
Great. Okay. And last question before we get to the ones from today that have come in through the chat, which are plenty of them. I'm concerned about security in the home, and it says a question for Wendell. Sometimes I forget to lock my front door, and I'm thankful nothing has happened. Is there an alarm system that would let me know the door is unlocked? Also, is it wise to invest in Alexa? I'm not sure you're going to answer that particular investment question. But.
Well, you know, it's a good question. In terms of forgetting to lock the door, there's probably all sorts of little memory tricks that you can find online to just trigger, like, if I have just closed my door, you know, remember to do that. But you've probably heard the expression smart homes a lot. Smart homes are linked up to electronic systems to turn lights on and off for security, burglar alarms, you name it. Most apartments are small here that we live in New York City. We're not going to have something like that. But if you live in a house, certainly it's a possibility. I do use one of those home electronic systems, such as Alexa, and I find it very, very useful. Not just for timing stuff and getting weather reports, but you know, you can tie it into the contacts that you have on your computer or your phone. So if you know you had an accident in your phone or you can't get out or whatever, you can say, so and so, call my friend blah 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 on her cell, and instantly that will dial it and become a speaker, and hopefully your friend will answer right away, and you can say, I got a problem. So they can do things like that. We use that, so those electronic home things like Alexa have lots and lots of uses, and I learned all about it when I went to Senior Planet, which is a great place here in the city to learn about technology. In terms of anything that you can do personally to your home, you certainly want to check, if you live in an apartment building, check with your board to find out what they would permit, what they can do, and you want to make sure that it conforms to the co-op or the condo regulations.
Okay, now turning to some questions that have come in, and this is certainly one that we get a lot of and creates specific problems with when you're a person living alone without support, landlord harassment or other interactions with the landlord that are negative, let's say. This is an older single woman in the building, or older single women in the building are being harassed by the landlord. They've reached out to Division of Human Rights, but they're looking for small steps they can take to find emotional and moral support. She's also concerned that if they were forced out of their unit or for health reasons or other reasons, they fear the landlord would change the lock and which is illegal, but doesn't
It is illegal.
Illegal things do happen. So advice for people who are living alone, dealing with challenging issues with landlord and or where they could get some emotional support for these challenges.
I'm so sorry. That just sounds terrible. I'm so sorry. It sounds like that person has already reaching out to the Division of Human Rights is a great idea. It's another thing I would suggest NILAG for. They have hotlines related to housing that you can call. I'm also happy to send that. I think I'm a social worker by training. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really speak to those legal questions, but I would definitely reach out to NILAG, and I can find those housing hotline numbers.
Yeah,
and it also sounds like what I heard also was there's a group of people who are experiencing the same terrible thing. I hope that you're in community with them, right? Perhaps you could create your own type of support group, and lean on each other. And maybe I don't know if there's someone in the building who's another person you could identify in the building who is a leader other than the landlord. But think maybe about other people in the building who you could, if it felt safe, you could reach out to. But this also sounds like a New York City legal. I'm sorry, and it sounds like illegal.
Yeah, I think the first step in something like this is to find out what your rights are, because once you know what is possible and what you are legally entitled to, it's a lot easier to know then how to pursue the right way to solve the problem.
Yeah, and there are groups like Tenants and Neighbors as well, which can help with organizing in a building, which may or may not be feasible in this particular situation, but it overlaps with what Claire was saying, creating a tenants association and things like that. And so those are additional thoughts. Since we're on the Housing and Human Rights Commission issue, I'll turn to this next question. Our 6-story co-op building has 3 steps in the front lobby, which is not very wide. There is no ramp. I recently broke my foot and fortunately able to manage the steps. What if something worse happens and I need a wheelchair? I can answer that sort of, but if you want to take a swipe. You
can start, certainly.
Okay, well, you should, landlords are required to provide reasonable accommodation. And what is reasonable may depend on the design of your building, but certainly reaching the Human Rights Commission is the agency that enforces this, and we work with them closely on a number of these kinds of situations where somebody needs a ramp in their building, somebody needs some other accommodation based on disability. So that is the law. And again, it doesn't mean that a landlord can be forced to install an elevator into a building that doesn't have an elevator, because that would not be considered a reasonable accommodation. But a ramp is usually a reasonable accommodation if there's any way to do it that will, that is, architecturally possible. So that's my answer. Anything to add to that, or? Okay. How do we find an experienced care manager?
I'm going to again direct you to this nifty website that also has for the National Organization of Aging Life Care Professionals.
Yeah,
they have a New York chapter. You can type in, same as Wendell's been saying with some of these websites, you can type in your zip code and up will pop people.
Okay.
And again, a great thing to do as your first small step for something.
And I may repeat questions because I forgot that I asked them earlier.
No problem.
We get into the new ones. This is, I think, for Wendell, and it's getting into the, what do I do when I'm alone or when something happens to me? Who can file your taxes or respond to questions regarding taxes?
Depending on the severity of your physical and mental disability, if there is one, I'm not sure if the question is if it's just, kind of light help assistance or turn it over to somebody. And we've talked about turning things over to people, either to a daily money manager, invoking your financial power of attorney, or a bill paying service. Actually, they could probably help with all sorts of things, either temporarily or on an ongoing basis. And it's up to you as to how much leeway and how much freedom they have in terms of accessing your personal information, like passwords and account numbers and things like that. But if you have absolutely no one of yourself, you could also start with your accountant to find out whether he or she can do more on an ongoing basis. And again, talk to people, talk to your friends. Chances are there's people that have had similar challenges or questions, and find out who they use and why they like them. If they don't like the person they use, that's not really a recommendation. I asked somebody once for an elder law recommendation. She said, well, he's in Queens and he's not very good, but I'll give you his name. And I was like, why would I want that? So talk to someone who is happy with the services of somebody.
Yeah. Got it. A question about Duro. Can you be a little more specific about Duro and what it is all about? I am new to the senior world, living on the Upper East Side and the single life. Somebody had asked me what Duro stood for.
What is Durot? Okay, so
I looked it up what the word means.
So Durot is a Hebrew word. It means generations. Durot was started in the mid 70s by a group of social workers who were in touch with their older adult neighbor, and they said there should be a way in which we can all be in community. So meaning generations means that we work also intergenerational. We have intergenerational programs, but Durot itself is a community-based organization, a social service organization that works with older adults yes, on the Upper East Side, yes, on the Upper West Side. We have particular catchment areas. We now also virtually serve, particularly in the programs that I work with, people from California, Florida, wherever they are, because our programs are currently on Zoom. So we offer many different types of programs, wellness classes like exercise, Tai Chi, etc., Qigong, as well as different small groups like memoir and poetry and storytelling, as well as one-time large format programs. Tomorrow, we had actually a few days ago, we had a program about Medicaid and home care. We also have a program about Marc Chagall coming up. So I'm happy to send you our monthly calendar so that you have a sense of the type of programmatic offerings we do. We also have social workers who work specifically with clients. We'd have kosher meal at home deliveries clients, and as well as this door-to-door we told you about. Lots of different programmatic and social service opportunities. And I see the website is now in the chat.
Check them out. And it sounds like was also a question about it's only in Manhattan, and for direct services, yes, correct. But
so for direct services, Durot is in Manhattan, and we also have a Durot in Westchester. If you're in Westchester. But for programming now, you can be wherever you are and you can join us. And that is what we call a COVID silver lining.
Okay, great. Yeah. All right. And then a question, this is more for Wendell. You talked about a lot of things to plan for when you know you were away. What about unexpected absences when you can't respond, stroke, heart attack, car, or other serious accident? I think you sort of addressed that. That's why you need to plan, but maybe reiterate that.
There's certainly there's going to be some situations where there's just no great answer handy, and that's what makes life challenging and interesting. But yes, look, when you have a chance to review the PowerPoint, especially, or this whole session, there are some things you can at least start to think about who has the keys and who you would trust with certain things. Thinking about it now always pays off later. But if you need immediate help, I mean, you would have to call probably, like a home health aid service. And that's a whole topic unto itself. So there are services out there, whether you need them short-term, long-term, but a lot of it has to do with just thinking ahead of a worst case scenario. The expression about, expect the worst, or plan for the worst and expect the best. It's always good to just think proactively, like what could go wrong, and then figure out how can we either mitigate the effects of it or even prevent something from happening. Yeah.
Okay, great. And this was sort of addressed, but I got the question again. So where is the best place to store end of life, POA, et cetera, documents for others to access? And before you answer, I'll mention again, there is a video online that has a great deal of information on this. There were a number of other questions related to these, and there always are at all our events. So I recommend looking at that video and the resources that are attached if I wasn't able to get to your question regarding that, because there's a lot of information, but where to store?
Well, we work with some organizations that we suggest making a wallet card. So make a card either, some templates exist online, but you can also make one your own. Make a card you can fit in your wallet with especially for your healthcare proxy, for example. That's right. Information that you can put on a small piece of paper.
Right. We talked about the fridge card before. The fridge card and the wallet card often are pretty much the same thing. Because say you're out and about and, God forbid you get hit by a bike or something and you're out cold, at least in your wallet, it'll tell some very important immediate things for the people who are immediately taking care of you. In terms of where to store the documents, healthcare proxy we talked about, your doctor has a copy of your healthcare proxy. Whoever your healthcare proxy or proxy and your backup proxy are, they should have a copy of it, of course. So if they have to come to the hospital, they can say, this is me. All right, your doctor has it, your proxies themselves will have a copy of it. Like your will, don't put your will in a safety deposit box, because once you die, they seal those things and nobody can get at them. So don't think in terms of that. But if you have a home safe that you want to keep the originals of some, yeah, that's fine. But again, it's all about the accessibility. Who will need that document? When will they need it? And where will they get it?
And we've talked about in terms of your health, in terms of your advanced directive, like your healthcare proxy, your PCP having it. Many of us see many doctors. If there's another doctor whom you see frequently, who you also trust, you can give them it too. It can be, doesn't need to just be held by your primary care doctor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And my final thing for you is Wendy says, remind Claire that to tell people about signing up for the 6-week solo aging program course. So if you want to.
Sure, I can do that again. So we, so as I've said, and I know because my emails are coming on my screen, I know that some of you have already emailed me saying that you want to sign up for the workshop. Our next workshop, just open to the community, begins in a few weeks on April 13th. As I said, space is limited. We've already begun advertising it, but we do have some space should you be interested in starting soon. So please email me. We also will offer the program quarterly, so it won't go away. If for some reason you're put on a wait list, you will still be able to participate at some point. So that's April 13th is when it starts. We also, as I said, if you're a member of the LGBTQ+ community, We'll have a program specifically for members of that community, and I think in June. I don't have the dates yet. And then again, end of summer, early fall for the wider community again. So, and I anticipate that we will continue offering this workshop. There is, as demonstrated by the amount of people here and by the amount of interest that we receive, another plug for you're not alone. And what we aim to do, and what you help us do, because we couldn't do it if you weren't there, right, is or create communities for people who are seeking additional community. It's I'm going to use the word gift again, because I'm a social worker, so I like saying things like that. It is a gift to be able to foster and cultivate those communities that are maintained by you, right? So you do the work, and it's it's just so important, and it's so gratifying to be able to be in community together.
Wonderful. Well, that's a great way to close. Thank you so much again to both Wendell and Claire. Our next senior roundtable session will be held on Thursday, April 28th, and will focus on technology in the older adult space, including a presenter from MIT's Age Lab, who will discuss incorporating the needs and preferences of older adults into tech design. Thank you again for joining us today.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.